pay for my own plane ticket if you just, let me come, and if we can split a room. I'm like, okay, if you don't serial murder me, I'd be happy to split a room with you.
Just regular murder her, not serial murder.
Yeah, not serial murder. Hi everyone, welcome to Behind the Booth. I'm Jade, and with me as always is my co-host and award-winning producer, Heather.
And on this channel, we talk about wild stories from Comic-Con vendors. And again, like we always talk about, but we have a ton of conventions coming up and we're super excited about them. We would love to meet you guys. We would love to see you in person. We will be at the Tokyo Dog Designs booth. It is always brightly colored. It has white shelves. Like, it's really easy. It's pretty easy to see once you know what you're looking for. But we would love to meet you. And the next ones coming up are like in the spring, in the summer, early summer. What do we got?
Yeah, so I always try to post a week or two ahead of time on our social media. So you can follow us at anything at Tokyo Dog Designs. We have all of them because we're on top of that. But our next one you'll probably be seeing is MegaCon, Amazing Con are our next two. And then hopefully June. God, we're everywhere. So we'll talk about the summer later.
Yes, we will. But we're super excited. We would love to meet all of you guys and talk to you. And just a heads up, we might be doing some interviews actually at the conventions. And so if you would like to be a part of that, please let us know, because I would love to interview you about this and get you on our podcast. But anyway, on to the show. So today we are talking about being a good booth neighbor and also neighborhood watch with your booth neighbors. Like, there's a lot that goes into making sure you have good relationships with the people around you. And there's just, I don't know, there are so many ways to not be a dick, and somehow people still screw it up. So let's talk about like how can we like make these relationships even better?
Yeah. So one of the ways that I usually start my day with the booth is that when I pull up our bags into the booth area, depending on the schedule and what's going on, you might have people that have already set up. You might be having people that are currently setting up, or people that aren't even there. So I work really hard to meet the people that are in my direct sphere. So if I can see them across from me, if they're within earshot of not screaming, I try to learn their names. And I say try because names can be really hard. If I can relate them to something, I do my best. If not, I actually write their names on a sticky note and put what booth they are in case I need them. Because sometimes it might be something like, hey, David, do you have, a napkin? Or do you have any batteries? Like, it could be anything. Or a lot of times what happens is we have to pee. And so it'll be like, hey, can you watch my booth while I go pee? And it helps if you know their name, instead of be like, hey, yo, dude, like, so you introduce yourself.
I've never met.
Yeah. So introduce yourself. I always try to be very friendly and nice, even when I'm in a mood, which those of you who have watched the show, you've probably seen the moods that have happened. She's laughing because she knows what's going on.
I know.
But we try to at least introduce each other first, and get to know each other. Most people are nice. Actually, the meanest people I've ever met at any kind of like booth thing ever are art shows.
Like craft fairs?
Yeah, craft fairs. Those people are rabid. Yeah. Like, they're the meanest people I've ever met. So I don't do those anymore. They make me upset and I get all squeaky. But usually the Comic-Con stuff, they're really cool. I've met only really one booth person that was not kind. But for the most part, we're kind of in it together. So we're all kind of, it's kind of like being in the circus, I would think. I mean, I've never been in the circus, so that's probably not the best example, but you're traveling around all over the US and Canada, sometimes overseas, and you'll see the same people at various events, and they'll come by and visit you and you visit them. Actually at the Atlanta Comic-Con, somebody that I had met in Albuquerque came over to my booth and they're like, hey, are you here by yourself this week? And I was like, yeah, I am. They're like, can I borrow your extra badge? And I said, sure, you can just have it. I was like, what do you need it for? Like, I just said yes before I even knew what they wanted. I was like, here, I just gave it to him. She's like, oh, my grandmother really wants to meet some of the cast from MASH and have them sign her DVD collection. And it's her birthday next weekend. She's like, and you'll save me $50, which I can put towards the MASH cast if I don't have to pay for, a thing. So it's like, yeah, sure, whatever. Tell Gam Gam I said hi, and they said, do you want anything for it? And I said, no. And lo and behold, somehow I, get things at my table. People leave you presents at your table from other things. Like Donuts. I've been left donuts. I've bought people coffee,
Mhm.
who are willing to help me. So booth neighbors are really important. Sometimes
Mhm.
they even have people that are floats. And that's what I would call Heather. Heather will help me at my booth when I need it really badly, but I always tell her, go have fun, go to panels, just come back in 2 hours, let me pee, or, here's $20 for lunch, like,
Yeah.
whatever. And a lot of people have floats as well. And so sometimes those floats will watch your booth while you go and do things.
Mhm.
And I actually met somebody, her name is Angel. I assume it's okay that I'm talking about her. She cosplays as some people from various animes. And my favorite one that she's doing right now is from Spy and Family.
Mm.
Uh, it's super cute. I have my Christmas video, quote unquote, my holiday video is us dancing together, and she's wearing the outfit. It's really cute.
Cute.
I met her at Dallas, I want to say, or New York, one of the two. And she's like, do you do a lot of these? I'm like, I do, but I don't always have a way to hire for help. She's like, oh, I love doing these. She's like, I'll pay for my own plane ticket if you just, let me come, and if we can split a room. I'm like, okay, if you don't serial murder me, I'd be happy to split a room with you.
Just regular murder her, not serial murder.
Yeah, not serial murder. And so she's traveling around with another booth people. They're already paying for expenses, and she's just coming by to mine, letting me go pee and then come back. And so it's really helpful. And I bought her a boba tea, and then she bought me one. I was like, that's not how this works. Like, you helped me, I bought you a boba tea, and then you bought me another one. So whatever. But you kind of look out with that. So making friends with your neighbors, making friends with people that have extra floats, and then compensate them in some way. I cannot say that enough. I do have a lot of people that ask me, well, how much do you pay per hour? How much do you do this per hour? And I'm like, I treat my helpers like gold because I need them and I don't want to abuse them. So I buy them t-shirts, I get them coffee. I mean, if they won't accept actual money, if they won't take Venmo, I find something, especially something if I know that they want, because you talk to them.
Yeah.
Or like, the one that dresses up as Spy and Family, I might find her a Funko Pop that matches. I mean, I don't know. Like, until you really know them well, I don't know. But so that's part one of neighborliness.
Yeah, and the other part is the neighborhood watch, because there is like, we're like you said, we're all in this together. We're all right next to each other. And when you're behind your booth, especially your booth, it has that, all those shelves and everything. We can't see everything that's happening all the time. We don't know everything that's happening all the time. And so it's really nice to be able to, have met the people around you. So they're kind of keeping an eye on everybody around them. That's what I'm doing, right? After we've made friends with those people, I'm like, hey, watching out for everybody, because we don't want everybody to get ripped off. We don't want anybody to have a bad experience in this. And so we're all keeping an eye on each other. And so what experiences have you had with that, especially when you're by yourself? Because when I'm there, obviously you have more help, you have more security. I'm the muscle, but
yeah. So one of the things that we see a lot is when the other booths need to run and do something, get a bathroom break, whatever. And they'll be like, hey, can you watch my booth for a minute? And I mean, if there's a bathroom nearby, they'll only be gone 10 minutes. If there's a long line, they might be gone for an hour. Yeah. And so there's a couple ways for us to handle this, especially as the artist booth, is we can cover up our booth and leave. That kind of looks bad for most of us, just because it looks like you're closed, which technically you are temporarily closed, but it's not ideal. Or you have somebody like myself, and I'll stand between the two booths, either in front or behind it. And when people come by, I'll be like, oh, he'll be right back. He's just running to the restroom. Or they'll be like, well, do you know when he's back? I'm like, come back in maybe 20 minutes. I bet he'll be here. Or I'll hand a card out if they have their own cards. Be like, reach out to him. He's booth number. And I always know their booth numbers because it's next to mine. Like, he's booth number 512. He'll be right back. And a lot of times if I keep talking to them, because I don't have a lot going on at my booth, they'll come back in time. And I've done it too. When I've come back from the bathroom, they're like, oh, there she is. And I'm like, hey, and I kind of like waddle back because I'm in the kimono and tall shoes. So part of that is to make sure the people are still engaged with, because that's what's going to help your sales. And then B, to make sure nothing wanders off. Mm-hmm. A lot of the artists, especially that I've seen, have stuff on their tables. There's a few that will have displays and all their stuff is behind the display. I wouldn't say theft is a very big part of what we have to deal with. I've heard that there's been theft at certain events. It doesn't typically come from other vendors, but I have heard stories where some vendors have tried to steal from other vendors during pack up or afterwards. And there is security, there is video cameras, and that's how they actually caught this vendor that was stealing, but they got blacklisted. It's just generally not done. And I don't know how to say that. It's just part of our culture that we just don't take from each other.
Just don't
And
do
if we need something, we usually talk to each other. There was a lady that was next to me who desperately needed batteries for her fairy lights. For those of you who know or don't know this about expos, they charge extra for electricity, and it's not a little extra. It's like a couple $100 a day. And that adds up over 3 days. One of the daily charges was more than I used in a month. And I was like, no. So we do a lot of battery powered stuff. We do a lot of things that are solar powered if we can, that we can charge overnight, or during the day or in the car or whatever. We do our best. But she's like, I'm out of batteries and my displays won't light up. I was like, okay, I'll find some batteries. And I brought them back to her and she's just like, oh my God, thank you. So good. Oh, and then she became my best friend for the rest of the weekend.
Yeah.
And she had a helper who kept hopping into my booth when I went to go pee.
Yeah.
So it's kind of like a trade and barter system too. You will have vendors that will ask you, hey, do you want to trade stuff? And that is up to you. I generally don't trade for anything but food.
Mm-hmm.
I will trade for food or time. Yeah. But trading back and forth, it's a whole thing for me that I just always want to make sure that I see a monetary value with the things that I produce. But there's been some artists where I want one of their things and they want mine, and it was an easy trade. Mm-hmm. I always offer to pay first, and then I offer the trade. Some people come up to you and say like, hey, do you want to trade for this? I'm like, oh, I don't really trade, which is for the most part true. But if Heather has something and I'm like, hey, I can pay this, I can grab some cash, or would you rather trade for something? Is there something I have that you'd like? And then that way it's an open invitation of saying yes or no.
Yeah.
Because that gets a little uncomfortable because you want to be like, oh, I don't want anything from your booth. I don't want to trade with you. But it also puts them on the spot. So it's a little uncomfortable.
Right.
Yeah. But I definitely traded for coffee. I was dying and I'm like, what do you want? I'm like, I got cash. Do you want me to pay you for the coffee? They're like, actually, I want one of your Pride pins. I'm like, done.
Take it.
There you go.
It's all yours.
Coveted that coffee.
Well, and just, starting those relationships with those people. We've talked about this with cosplayers, and we'll probably talk about that with like the admin, the people that are taking care of the event. We'll talk about that as well, because that's a whole other arena too. But with your booth neighbors, I feel like you get to know each other pretty well because you're just staring at each other basically for 3 days. If nobody's walking around, you're just sitting there looking at each other. I remember one time there was somebody who really wanted to buy something and they only had $100 bill, and we couldn't break it. And so across the way, you're like, Mike, you break $100 bill. And he's like, yeah,
can you break it?
Yeah, but that was great because they couldn't have bought that. Like, they might have walked away and we would have lost the sale, but because we had had that relationship with that person across the way, we were able to do that. And another big thing about having those booth neighbors is I've kept in contact with some that we've met of other booths, like not even neighbors, but just other booth people too. And be like, hey, are you going to be at this convention? Oh, that's fantastic. Like, I'll be sure to come and talk your booth up to people. Like, you really look out for each other. Like, it goes beyond don't steal from each other. It goes to let's support each other. Like, I mean, I'm sure there are some assholes out there, and we haven't really met that many, but I don't think I've really met any, but we really try to just support each other and build each other up, and that's what we're all there for. So if you can do that, just make sure you're kind to the people around you. You're, giving them the space that they need. You're, just having that good communication open with those people.
Polite. That's all I can say is just be courteous and polite.
Yeah.
And there's been times where actually at that same one where we said, hey, Mike, can you break this? They needed to break down some boxes and store them somewhere for something. And I was you can borrow our booth. Yeah. So they just put everything behind our draped curtain because we had a 10 by 10. I was like, just put it back there. I don't care. Yeah. No one's going to see it. And they were super grateful. I was like, I wasn't using that space. You can have it. Some people try and take advantage of you when you're nice to them, but more often than not, it doesn't happen. Yeah. And I also do create boundaries with my neighbors. If I don't like them, which if I don't like you, you will for sure know it. But I keep my replies very short, very curt, and I don't want to say dismissive, but dismissive, because I don't want to put my energy into you. I want to put it into people that I like.
Yeah.
So I will say this as nicely as possible. If you are another booth or vendor and you're giving unsolicited advice, don't. Some people really like that information, and I'm sure that that's great. But one of the best ways that I actually received advice was from Tanya Waring. I absolutely love her. She said, could I coach you, or could I give a suggestion? And then that was up to you to open that door or not. And I said, yeah, sure. I'd love your information, because she's brilliant, right? Or somebody would say that to me. I won't say who. And I was like, maybe later, which was my nice way of saying, fuck no. And then later just never came. Yeah. So, but somebody would be like, you should do this or you should do that. I'm like, you should shut the fuck up. How about that? Like, you need a nice warm cup of shut the hell up, because I'm like, I don't want to deal with what your opinion is. And it's not that I'm closed off, but come at me politely.
Yeah.
Or if I ask you a question, give me the answer, because I'm asking. Right. But that's one thing that's killed at least one relationship with myself and another vendor, is they thought they knew everything and they did not.
Yeah. And they just put it across that way. So don't do that. Don't gatekeep, and don't give unsolicited advice. Like, there you go. Okay. So forming those relationships, be kind to your neighbors, help each other out, don't, be clear about your boundaries. I mean, yes, be clear about your boundaries. Don't say you're going to do something if you absolutely can't. And yeah, just be polite to everybody.
Well, a special thank you to Nerdy Girl Podcast for sponsoring this episode. We will see you next time.